You walk through the crimson gates of the Forbidden City, and the air itself seems to pause. Every step you take echoes softly across ancient stones, polished by centuries of silent feet. The wooden doors behind you groan as they close, a sound heavy as if sealing away not only light but truth itself. The passage narrows. The world dims. And then, the silk curtains. They are thick, layered, heavy with incense smoke, dyed the deep yellow reserved for only one, the son of heaven's chosen consort. As you brush against them, the fabric sighs like a living thing, as though reluctant to let you pass. Beyond, the chamber opens, the Empress's hidden chambers. Few men have entered here. Fewer still have left with their tongues unscorched by the weight of what they witnessed. In this space, power is not shouted. It is whispered. The chamber does not glitter like the throne hall. Instead, it breathes in muted shadows, lacquer screens glowing faintly in lamplight, golden cranes painted to appear as if mid-flight, and the faint rustle of silk as unseen attendants drift past. You catch the scent of sandalwood, layered with something sharper, almost metallic. It clings to your tongue like a secret unspoken. Historians still argue whether these chambers were truly sanctuaries or prisons. Was the Empress free to command from behind these veils, or trapped by their weight? One record claims that Empress Jiaozhuang, grandmother of Kangxi, summoned ministers into such a chamber, dictating policy from the shadows. Another insists she never left her quarters at all, her words carried only by eunuchs whose loyalty was carved not by blood, but by knives. You move deeper. The silk curtains fall behind you, muffling the world outside. The chamber swells with silence so thick it feels alive. A painted screen depicts phoenixes rising through smoke. In the dim flicker of the oil lamps, the birds seem to stir, wings trembling as though about to burn the chamber itself. Somewhere faintly, you hear a sound, the slip of fabric across polished floor. A concubine, a servant, or only the house itself remembering footsteps that no longer exist? The Forbidden City is notorious for such hauntings. Tourists today speak of soft weeping near abandoned courtyards, of figures in elaborate robes vanishing when approached, ghosts or only echoes trapped in the bricks. The Empress's bed stands low and wide, dressed in silks embroidered with dragons and clouds. To outsiders, it was a symbol of union, the very seat where the future of the empire might be conceived. To those within, it was a battlefield more perilous than any border war. For every night an emperor chose to linger here, a rival concubine faded. For every night he strayed elsewhere, the Empress's power dimmed, one candle at a time. You can almost hear it, the shuffle of robes, the scrape of jade bangles, the faint tremor in a woman's voice as she begs the emperor to stay. A love song? No. It is a negotiation written not in ink, but in the rise and fall of breath. Beyond the bedchamber lies a smaller antechamber lined with low chests. Their brass locks gleam faintly. Inside, whispers claim were talismans, jade charms carved into the shape of lotuses, strips of silk embroidered with spells to bind affections, and in darker stories, vials of powders, some to inflame desire, others to end it forever. Historians debate these rumors. Some dismiss them as inventions of gossip mongers who envied the palace women. Others argue that evidence of such practices exists in court records, thinly veiled as offerings or medicinal tonics. The truth may never be settled, but the whispers linger, just as surely as the scent of sandalwood and steel. You pause. Somewhere very close now a voice sighs, not the voice of one alive. A thread of sound worn thin by centuries drifts across the chamber. The oil lamp flickers, the phoenix wings on the screen stretch, and the curtains sway though the air is still. It is here within the Empress's hidden chambers that every shadow carries two faces, one of desire, one of power. The walls have no mouths, yet they know every confession. And as the silk folds settle behind you, you realize the chamber has accepted you. For now, you drift closer to the low, wide bed, the long sang carved from sandalwood darkened by centuries of whispered nights. Its lacquered surface gleams faintly beneath the lamp's amber glow. You almost expect the wood to pulse with memory, to breathe with the voices it has held. The mattress, stuffed with silk floss, sinks faintly beneath your hand as though it remembers the weight of bodies long gone. The Empress's bed was not only for rest, it was a theater, a council chamber, a battlefield. Each night upon it was a performance of survival. To lie here was to stake a claim upon history itself. Records speak of Empress Wu Zetian. Though she ruled centuries before the Forbidden City, her shadow haunts every empress after her. She knew the bed was no place for sleep. It was a stage where words whispered in the night could carve empires. One chronicle describes how she leaned close to the emperor's ear, weaving silk-soft promises, until power slipped from his hand into hers. Historians argue whether this was truth or later invention, penned by rivals who feared a woman with such influence. Yet the story clings because it fits the shape of these chambers too well. Here too, the Empress whispered. Was it love she spoke, or commands disguised as affection? The eunuchs knew. They always knew. Standing in the antechamber, heads bowed, they heard the rise and fall of voices, a laugh too brittle, a silence too sharp. They carried every nuance like sealed letters in their hearts. Later, in corridors lit only by paper lanterns, they would trade fragments. He stayed 3 nights. He left at dawn. She wept after. Their loyalty was measured in silence, yet their silence was never empty. You hear it now, faint, uncertain, a murmur against the walls. It is not one voice, but many. The susurration of concubines waiting, hearts tied to the emperor's footsteps. The shuffle of eunuchs, writing silent reports with their eyes. The hiss of envy, the sigh of despair. Each sound threads itself through the chamber until you cannot tell whether it is past or present, human or ghost. The long sang creaks softly beneath an invisible weight. A hand unseen smooths the silken quilt. You catch the rustle of hair ornaments, the chime of jade beads colliding in haste, and then a single breath, low, urgent, at the nape of your neck. Historians debate whether the Empress truly loved, or whether affection was merely another duty. Some argue that behind the silk curtains, moments of genuine tenderness bloomed, fragile as plum blossoms in frost. Others insist that every glance, every sigh was scripted, calculated, wielded like a blade hidden within lace. What is certain is this: in the Forbidden City, the Emperor's favor was a currency more volatile than silver. To spend a night here was to gain decades of influence. To be overlooked was to vanish, erased as though you never lived. The oil lamps sputter. The chamber grows darker and the curtains tremble. It is not wind, there is no wind. Instead, it feels like breath exhaled by the long sang itself. And as you lean closer, you hear it. Not a moan, not a sigh, but a whisper. One word, soft, trembling, drawn from centuries ago. A word that might be love, or a command, or a curse. The bed has kept its secrets. But tonight it shares one with you. You pause, and the silence of the chamber becomes unbearable. Then you realize it is not silence at all. The walls themselves seem to hum, a low vibration like breath trapped in stone. They have been listening for centuries, swallowing every argument, every sob, every confession whispered in darkness. You press your palm against the lacquered panel. The wood is cold, slick, and beneath it something almost stirs. The Forbidden City was designed to mute sound, to prevent secrets from slipping beyond the palace. Yet secrets linger. They seep into beams, floor tiles, curtains heavy with incense smoke. You cannot build walls high enough to keep them contained. One chronicle tells of Empress Rouge of the Han dynasty. Though she reigned long before these walls were built, her legend foreshadows them. She was said to have listened through panels to the murmurs of rivals, then fed those whispers into her vengeance. Did she invent the art of walls as witnesses? Historians still argue, some calling her tales exaggerations of cruel men, others insisting that every dynasty sharpened its knives in such chambers. Here too the walls heard. They heard concubines curse each other in voices too low for human ears, yet sharp enough to cut the air. They heard eunuchs mutter oaths in the dark, binding themselves not to emperors but to survival. They heard the emperor's laughter, brief and brittle, swallowed almost at once by the silence of responsibility. You lean closer. The wall is whispering back, a phrase blurred with time but urgent. Do not trust. The rest collapses into static silence, as though the centuries refuse to let you know the ending. The lamp flickers. The painted cranes across the panel shift in the glow, their wings tilting downward, as though bending to listen too. The Forbidden City has long been called haunted. Guides speak of apparitions, pale women drifting through moonlit courtyards, eunuchs bowing in eternal repetition, headless soldiers searching for lost orders. Skeptics dismiss these as illusions born of suggestion. Yet those who have lived within the walls confess, the palace remembers. It replays. And if you listen closely enough, it will show you what it remembers. Tonight it shows you. You hear the sound of quarrels in muffled tones, a concubine pleading, another mocking. A eunuch's sharp intake of breath as he realizes the emperor has overheard. A voice low commanding, "Bring her forward." Then silence, followed by the unmistakable crack of bamboo against skin. The walls have no eyes, but they paint the scene with sound. They show you cruelty not written in history, but endured in flesh. Historians argue still, were these walls protectors, keeping secrets safe, or betrayers carrying echoes to rival ears? Architectural records suggest hidden ducts and hollow spaces designed to amplify sound. Was this intentional surveillance or accidental resonance? The debate remains unsolved, but tonight there is no doubt. These walls are alive. The air grows colder. The scent of sandalwood turns acrid, like smoke rising from something just burned. A thread of laughter slips through the darkness, high, brittle, and cut short too quickly. You turn, but there is no one. Only the walls gleaming faintly with oil, their painted wings trembling in the flicker of flame. They are still listening, and now they are listening to you. You step beyond the Empress's chamber and into a narrow passage where the air grows stiller, colder. Here shadows deepen, and with them another presence takes shape, the eunuchs. Neither holy servants nor masters, they were the living ghosts of the Forbidden City. Their bodies were marked by sacrifice, their futures amputated, yet their hands held the keys to every locked chamber, every silken veil. They move soundlessly in memory. You hear the shuffle of cloth, the muted chime of jade tags at their belts. Always near, never fully seen, They linger like silhouettes painted in smoke. The eunuch was paradox itself. To the world he was powerless, stripped of lineage, denied the most basic right of continuation. Yet within these red walls he commanded lives. He guarded the emperor's harem, carried the empress's commands, and whispered in the ears of ministers. In one dynasty after another, eunuchs were reviled in text, yet indispensable in practice. Historians still argue whether their power was exaggerated by moralists who sought to discredit them, or whether these men truly bent the fate of empires. Records of Wei Zhongxian in the Ming dynasty describe him as a tyrant who held the throne hostage. Other scholars suggest such stories were propaganda, exaggerated by those who later erased his faction. You walk deeper, and a scent clings to you. Oil used to anoint ceremonial blades, herbs burned in cleansing rituals. The eunuch's loyalty was not born of affection, but of ritual scar blood and silence. They swore oaths no other servants could: to serve without lineage, to hold power without heirs, to vanish into history unremembered. You imagine one such oath: a chamber lit by a single lamp, a boy kneeling, shivering while the steel waits. Around him elders chant softly, a blade flashes, the world alters. He rises, pale and trembling, not less than a man, but remade into something liminal, neither one nor the other. And the walls accept him. Their presence was spectral. At night, when the emperor's bed curtains stirred, eunuchs waited outside like shadows carved into the floor. They bore witness to every arrival and every dismissal, recording the emperor's affections not in ink, but in silent tallies. They knew who rose, who fell, who would vanish by morning. Some whispered they were like the palace ghosts themselves, cursed to wander without sons, without graves, honored by descendants. Yet others believed the eunuchs transcended mortal ties, that their silence gave them access to forbidden truths. You hear it now, a chant low murmured in unison, words of an oath long broken from human memory. The air presses heavy, and for a moment you feel the cold press of a hand upon your shoulder, thin, delicate, yet unyielding. A eunuch stands there in shadow, though you cannot see his face. He leans close, lips almost against your ear. The breath carries only one word: remember. Then he is gone, absorbed back into darkness. Historians puzzle over their role. Were eunuchs the loyal keepers of imperial order, or the parasites who hollowed dynasties from within? The truth, like the chambers, is layered. What cannot be denied? They were everywhere, watching, waiting, whispering. And now, as you feel the curtain stir behind you, you understand. Their whispers still linger. The passage narrows into a chamber lit by a single lamp. The flame flickers inside a bronze lotus, casting petals of light across the stone floor. You feel it before you see it, the weight of ritual, heavy as incense smoke, clinging to the very air. Here eunuchs bound themselves with oaths that could not be undone. On a low altar rests a dagger, its blade darkened by time, but still sharp enough to gleam when the flame leans toward it. Beside it, a vial carved of jade, sealed with wax, and near that, a slip of silk embroidered with crimson thread. A prayer, a warning, or perhaps both. The eunuch's initiation was more than mutilation. It was ceremony. A body broken was a soul reborn. To step beyond that threshold was to abandon lineage, desire, and even name, surrendering all to the forbidden city. Some chronicles describe blood dripped onto yellow silk, then burned, smoke rising toward the heavens as silent proof of loyalty. Others insist jade vials preserved what had been taken, kept in secret vaults as grotesque pledges of servitude. Historians remain divided. Was this ritual real, or a rumor whispered by horrified courtiers. No clear records survive, but even absence of proof became part of the myth, reinforcing the aura of fear and mystery surrounding the eunuchs. You kneel before the altar. The air quivers, and suddenly you are no longer alone. Shadows thicken into figures. Robed men, heads bowed, voices murmuring in unison. The chant is soft, yet each syllable lands heavy like drops of ink staining silk. A boy steps forward, trembling, his gaze fixed on the floor. His hands clutch the edge of his robe until the knuckles blanch. The elder lifts the dagger. For a moment the flame falters. You hear the boy's breath catch, then vanish into silence. The vow is made, the room exhales. The boy does not cry. His tears have no place here. In the centuries that followed, eunuchs would wield their oaths like invisible blades. They invoked loyalty not through words, but through the mere reminder of what they had sacrificed. For them, betrayal was unthinkable, or at least so they wished others to believe. Yet dynastic records teem with betrayals orchestrated by these very men, proof that ritual could not bind ambition forever. Even so, the ritual left a mark not only on bodies, but on the palace itself. You feel it under your knees. The stones still damp with echoes, still cold with blood, long cleaned yet never forgotten. The flame flickers again. A figure moves at the corner of your sight, thin, bent, yet radiating presence. He holds the jade vial aloft, and though you cannot see its contents, you feel your stomach twist. He whispers, though his lips barely move. This is loyalty. This is power. This is silence. Then the vial shatters, the lamp extinguishes, and the chamber plunges into darkness. Historians argue, was this ritual grotesque myth, or an intentional weapon of propaganda to dehumanize eunuchs? The debate endures. What is certain, however, is that the Forbidden City thrived on ceremony. Every breath, every silence, every cut was woven into ritual. And as you sit in the dark, you realize perhaps the ritual was never meant for the eunuchs at all. Perhaps it was meant for the walls, the palace itself, to bind them forever into its service. You emerge from the ritual chamber, and the air feels different now, heavy, damp, as though the stone itself exhales. The corridor stretches long and narrow, lined with curtains that sway, though there is no wind. Their movement is slow, deliberate, like breathing lungs stitched from silk. You pause. Somewhere ahead a sound lingers. It is not footsteps. It is not speech. It is the faintest rustle, as if fabric trails along the polished tiles. The sound curls in your ear, weaving itself into your heartbeat until you cannot tell where it begins or where you end. The Forbidden City is a labyrinth of silence, yet no silence is ever empty. Visitors even today report soft weeping near the abandoned courtyards, or the sensation of being followed by a presence too light to cast a shadow. Skeptics dismiss these as tricks of the mind, yet here in this darkness, the air itself insists on memory. You lift a curtain, and behind it stands only another stretch of shadow. But in the lamplight's faint glow you see the shimmer of silk upon the floor. A trail. A reminder. Records speak of forgotten women. Concubines discarded once the Emperor's attention shifted. Some were sent away to silent chambers, their names erased, their faces never painted in scrolls. Others vanished entirely, their fates sealed by whispers. Did they die by poison, by despair, by decree? Historians argue, but the truth remains hidden beneath layers of silence. Yet the walls remember, the curtains remember, and tonight they breathe their memory into you. You hear it again, the faint drag of silk, then more clearly now the rhythm of a woman's breath, Shallow, urgent, then broken by a sob cut too quickly short. The curtains tremble. You reach out, but your hand meets only fabric, damp with cold. Suddenly a figure flashes at the edge of sight. A pale sleeve embroidered with phoenix feathers vanishes as the lamp sputters. The sound of bangles colliding echoes down the corridor, though no one walks there. Historians debate the ghosts of the palace. Were they merely legends born of fear? Or did the palace itself, with its endless rituals and suffocating rules, create phantoms of its own? The eunuchs spoke of them in hushed tones, warning novices never to wander after the third watch. Some scholars claim these tales were tools of control, a way to bind obedience through fear. Yet others suggest the palace truly pulsed with spirits, remnants of desires too powerful to fade. The corridor narrows. Ahead, the curtains open into a void where light cannot cling. You hear it once more. The rustle of silk, the weight of a breath too near. This time the voice that follows is not weeping. It is laughter. Thin, sharp, brittle. It lingers like smoke. You step forward. The darkness folds around you, and the palace exhales. You find yourself before another chamber. Its entrance veiled with curtains dyed in the forbidden yellow of Imperial authority. Few dared touch this color, for it belonged only to the throne and to the woman who shared it. As you draw the curtain aside, the fabric resists, as if the weight of centuries clings to its threads. Behind it the air shifts, warmer, perfumed, charged. This is no ordinary chamber. This is the Empress's court within the court, where silken whispers carried as much force as imperial edicts. The room glows with muted splendor. Lacquered screens depict mountains drowned in mist. Golden lotuses float across the ceiling beams, and a low table overflows with scrolls and seals. Yet it is not the decorations that command your attention. It is the emptiness of the throne-like seat at the room's center. Wide, tall, cushioned with dragon-embroidered silk, it waits as though for a sovereign. Historians still argue whether the Empress truly held power behind these curtains, or whether her influence was an illusion projected by fearful ministers. Some chronicles suggest Empress Dowager Cixi ruled entire decades from such hidden chambers, summoning officials through eunuchs and issuing orders as if from the emperor himself. Others dismiss these accounts as exaggeration, crafted by enemies who sought to demonize a woman in command. But the truth clings to the air here. Decisions were made in whispers, and dynasties tilted because of them. You hear a sound, the shuffle of parchment, the faint tap of a seal against wood. A eunuch's voice murmurs low, almost inaudible, as though reciting reports. Then silence, followed by the soft intake of a woman's breath. She does not raise her voice. She never needed to. "Write it," the breath commands. The eunuch bows in silence. The brush scratches, and an unseen decree drifts into being. The yellow curtain sways faintly, though no wind stirs. You feel the pressure of eyes watching you, eyes that weigh, measure, judge. They are not cruel nor kind. They are calculating, as sharp as blades hidden within velvet. A record whispers to memory, the Empress is the mother of the realm. Yet another whispers, she is the spider at the web's center. Which is true? Perhaps both. The power here was not brute force. It was ritual, suggestion, and silence. To speak too loudly would be dangerous. To command softly was divine. Ministers trembled more at a nod behind a curtain than at the roar of a general. For they knew, the emperor's wrath might flare and fade, but the empress's whispers could stretch for decades. You step closer to the vacant seat. The lamp trembles. For a moment the cushion dips, as though someone has just risen. The air is warm, scented faintly of jasmine and blood. A strand of hair, black, glossy, clings to the silk, and then as you lift it you hear it, a voice low, rich, commanding. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Behind the curtain lies the throne. The words ripple like thunder through the chamber, then vanish. The seat is empty once more. A lacquered table stretches before you, low and wide, its surface gleaming like still water under lamplight. Upon it rest jade cups, their rims stained faintly, as though they once held more than wine. The scent lingers, sweet, fermented, sharp with undertones of something less innocent. You lean closer. Even centuries later, the fragrance carries both promise and peril. This is where banquets blurred into battlegrounds. Imperial records describe the emperor's midnight feasts, where concubines offered toasts with trembling hands, and eunuchs poured wine with eyes lowered. Each sip carried weight. A cup could elevate a concubine to favor, or end her life before dawn. The court chroniclers, bound by ritual, never wrote of the poisonings directly, yet fragments remain. She retired early that night and was never seen again. Historians debate these accounts. Some dismiss them as rumor, insisting imperial banquets were tightly controlled. Others argue the opposite, that the opulence of the palace was cover for endless silent murders, wine masking the taste of death. You lift a cup. Its jade is cold, yet warmth seems to radiate from within as though liquid still fills it. A faint echo drips into your ear, the clink of cups, the chorus of voices murmuring toasts, then silence. One voice coughs, breaks, collapses. The others continue as though nothing has happened. The chamber drinks with you. Legends tell of Empress Chen during the Han dynasty, who was said to mix love philters into wine, binding the emperor's favor. Another story whispers of a Ming concubine who slipped poison into her rival's cup during a feast, smiling as she watched the color fade from her lips. Were these truths or fables woven by gossips eager to darken history? Scholars still argue, yet the persistence of such tales proves their power. The eunuchs too played their part. They were the stewards of wine, their silence binding them tighter than any corked jar. Did they obey faithfully? Or did their trembling hands tip fate toward one woman and away from another? The answer was never written, only swallowed as quickly as the wine itself. You place the cup back onto the table. For an instant it rocks, though your hand was steady. The liquid you thought absent sloshes faintly, a dark sheen glimmering before it vanishes. The cup stills, and then from the shadows a voice whispers, soft as a sigh against your ear, every toast is a gamble, every sip a curse. The table gleams as if it has been waiting centuries for you to drink. You step into a corridor where the light falls thin and weary. The chamber widens into an antechamber filled with shadows of men who never spoke their names aloud. Here the eunuchs ruled, though their power was draped in silence. You hear it, the faint creak of a wooden tablet, the shuffle of ink brushes, the quiet breathing of men who record the unrecordable. They write without signatures. They move without trace. Their hands arrange marriages, dictate decrees, deliver commands, yet their faces vanish in the margins of history. The eunuchs were never remembered as individuals. Their bodies had been unmade, their lineages cut, their futures severed. They were meant to serve as tools, yet paradoxically, they wielded influence so vast that even the emperor relied on them. They carried the empress's whispers like sacred relics. They ensured the emperor's nightly choices were documented, sometimes down to the hour. Historians argue whether these records were precise or manipulated. One scholar suggests the eunuchs altered the scrolls to favor certain women, reshaping the emperor's memory. Another insists the eunuchs dared not, that they were too afraid of discovery. Still, the absence of clarity speaks louder than proof. The chamber seems to pulse. In its silence, you feel the presence of unseen scribes. Hands brush across paper, though no bodies stand before you. Brushes scratch ink pools and words appear where none should be. She entered at dusk. She left before dawn. He smiled. He frowned. He turned away. Each line is sharp, unyielding, without commentary. These notes are records stripped of humanity, yet dripping with consequence. One tale whispers of a eunuch who, out of loyalty to the Empress, falsified the emperor's records, erasing nights spent with rivals. When discovered, he was executed, his body left unburied beyond the city walls. Was this tale true, or only a caution invented to remind others of their precarious place? Scholars still debate, yet the truth is undeniable. The eunuch's hands, nameless and countless, shaped dynasties as surely as generals on the battlefield. The air shifts. You see them now, dozens of pale hands reaching from the shadows, ink-stained, trembling yet tireless. They do not touch you, but they press against the world itself, reshaping it line by line. Her decree written here, a record altered there, and empires tilt on the axis of silence. Then in unison those hands withdraw, vanishing back into the dark. Only the faint scent of ink remains, metallic and bitter. A whisper trails after them, not male, not female, but collective. We had no names. Yet our hands were the empire. You step into a chamber unlike the others. At first glance it is bare, save for the faint glow of lamps trembling in their brackets. Then the light sharpens, multiplies, fractures, for the walls are covered in mirrors, tall and narrow, framed in gilt. They stretch from floor to ceiling, catching every flicker, every movement, every breath. You move, and 100 shadows follow. Your reflection staggers behind you, blurred and multiplied until you cannot tell which image is truly yours. This was no ordinary room. This was a stage for both truth and deception. Whispers in court chronicles speak of mirrored chambers within the Forbidden City. Some suggest they were used by concubines for dressing. Others claim they were built for divination, to reveal spirits. One tale insists that an empress forced ministers to stand before such mirrors, believing they revealed the heart's true intentions. Historians argue, were these stories allegories of paranoia or proof of secret rituals now erased from record? You hear footsteps and soft, bare, hesitant. In the mirrors, a woman glides past, though no one walks the floor. Her sleeve drags in silk across the tiles, yet when you turn, the room is empty. In reflection, she lingers, pale, perfect, eyes downcast, lips parted as if to whisper. Her voice arrives not through air, but through glass. What you see is never what is true. The mirrors ripple faintly, as though stirred by unseen water. Eunuchs too were said to fear such rooms. Without heirs, without legacies, their only reflection was themselves, fractured, endless, hollow. Some whispered that if a eunuch lingered too long, the mirror would show him whole again, restored but only for a moment before shattering into pieces sharper than knives. Was this truth, or simply another tale spun to frighten them into obedience? Scholars remain divided. The mirrors tighten around you. The reflections do not move as you do. One tilts its head when yours does not. Another lingers behind, lips curving upward in a smile you did not give. The air chills. Suddenly, every reflection speaks in unison, a chorus of whispers weaving into a single phrase. The palace has many faces. Which one will you wear? The lamp's gutter, The mirrors darken, leaving only one reflection still visible. Yours, yet older, paler, crowned with shadows. And then even that fades. The chamber exhales. You are left alone, though the memory of countless eyes pressed against the glass remains. The silence lifts, and in its place a single note unfurls, faint, brittle, as though plucked from strings long ago abandoned. You turn, and there in the half-light rests a tibar, its lacquer cracked, its strings dulled with dust. Yet the sound persists, trembling through the air like a moth's wing against glass. You follow it deeper into the chamber. The room itself seems tuned to this ghostly melody. Curtains sway as though to rhythm. Oil lamps flicker in cadence. The very stone beneath you hums with vibration. The palace, it seems, has never stopped listening. Imperial chronicles speak often of music at court, ensembles of flutes, zithers, drums meant to soothe the emperor, to glorify ritual, to mask the cries of the forgotten. Concubines were trained to play for him, their fingers bleeding on strings until the sound was perfect. Some scholars insist this music was ceremony alone, nothing more than ornament. Others argue it was language, a secret dialogue through melody, telling truths that words could not risk. One fragment in the Ming archives recalls an emperor who demanded that each concubine compose a melody to prove devotion. Another tale claims a eunuch once altered the tuning of instruments to spread coded messages across the palace. Was this myth or subtle truth buried beneath ornament? Historians disagree, but the music lingers. The sound grows richer. Now you hear not one instrument, but many. Drums pulsing like a heartbeat, flutes weaving high and thin, strings rippling in cascades. It is not joyous, it is not mournful. It is something between a hymn of longing bound with command, and layered beneath you hear another sound, not part of the music but concealed within it. A muffled cry, a sigh cut short, a whisper folded into notes. The melody is veil and weapon both. You glance at the tibar again. A figure kneels beside it now, pale-robed, her hair spilling like ink. Her fingers dance across strings, though they are frayed and broken. No sound should come, yet the air shivers with melody. Her head tilts and her eyes never meet yours. Her song swells, filling the chamber until it presses against your ribs. The lamps dim, curtains rise, and for a moment the palace itself sways to rhythm, like a body lost in trance. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence crashes down. Historians debate whether the palace music was truly heard by the emperor, or if it was meant for the walls alone. Some argue the women played only for themselves, each note a rebellion disguised as obedience. Others claim the eunuchs carried melodies from one chamber to another, shaping rumor into rhythm. The truth, like the music, cannot be grasped and only felt. You listen hard. The silence is heavy, yet faintly. Impossibly, the last note still quivers in your bones. You cannot tell whether it is memory or echo. And then, just as you turn away, the tibar plays one final sharp chord. It vibrates through the chamber like a blade unsheathed. The sound vanishes. The room holds its breath. The corridor widens into a chamber glowing faintly with lamplight, the air heavy with the scent of rouge and crushed petals. On carved tables lie brushes stiff with forgotten pigment, compacts of powdered pearl, fragments of lacquered combs. The walls here are tinted faint pink, not by design but by centuries of breath, powder, and whispered longing. At first glance it is beauty. But beauty here was always armor. Concubines were adorned not only for desire but for survival. Each stroke of powder upon a cheek was a weapon, each smear of rouge a battle cry. The Emperor's gaze could fall upon a woman for a night or a lifetime, and that difference lay in the subtle tilt of a brow, the careful shade of a lip. Court chronicles praise the radiant glow of favored consorts, but whispers tell another story, that powders often carried hidden dangers. Some were laced with mercury, quickening beauty while quietly unmaking flesh. Others concealed scars left by punishment or grief. Historians still argue, were these concoctions accidents of ignorance or deliberate poisons offered by rivals? You step closer to a mirror clouded with age. For an instant it clears. A face stares back, painted white, lips like coals, eyes rimmed in kohl. Beautiful, unyielding. Yet as you watch, the paint runs. Red bleeds downward, thick and wet. It is not pigment. It is blood. The vision flickers. The face vanishes. Only your reflection remains. Whispers linger of women chosen too young, painted too quickly, forced to bear the mask of desire before they understood its weight. Some records mention concubines punished by having their makeup stripped publicly, their bare skin declared an insult to the emperor. Others tell of empresses demanding their rivals be painted with powders laced in venom, beauty becoming execution. Historians contest these tales. Some claim they are inventions, moral warnings against vanity. Others insist such practices were common, hidden beneath the silks of ceremony. Whatever the truth, the chamber holds its testimony. You hear it now, the faint scratch of brushes against porcelain bowls, the soft sigh of women exhaling as rouge is pressed against their lips. Then a cough, then another. The sound sharpens into gagging, muffled cries behind painted smiles. The curtains tremble. A stain spreads across their golden weave, dark red blooming like a flower that should never grow. The lamps flicker low. A final whisper trails from the painted air, hushed but sharp. Beauty here was never only beauty. It was survival, and survival demands blood. The stain upon the curtain deepens, then vanishes. The palace sleeps, or so it seems. Midnight has passed, and the oil lamps burn low, their flames stretch thin like the last breaths of dying stars. The halls are hushed, courtyards drowned in moonlight, corridors emptied of footsteps. Yet silence in the forbidden city is always deceitful. You walk beneath carved beams, your shadow long against the lacquered tiles. And then movement. Quick, slender, vanishing just as your eyes catch it. A figure in silk, pale as bone, glides across the far end of the hall. Concubines were forbidden to wander at such hours. The emperor's will determined every movement, every step. To stray was treason, yet countless stories tell of women slipping through corridors after midnight, driven by jealousy, ambition, or despair. Some sought secret trysts with eunuchs, though such liaisons were punishable by death. Others sought priests or magicians, smuggling talismans to bind the emperor's heart. Historians question these tales. Were they real events, or lurid inventions penned by moralists eager to stain the women's reputations? Still, records of sudden disappearances, women struck from rosters with no explanation, give these whispers weight. You turn the corner. The air chills. The floor creaks softly, though you tread carefully. Ahead the figure appears again, long sleeves trailing, head bowed, hair unbound. She does not walk so much as drift, the rustle of her robes just audible against the tiles. You call out, though your voice is no more than a breath. She halts. Slowly she turns her head. The moonlight does not reach her face. Some eunuchs claim to see such figures in the hours before dawn. The wandering ladies, they called them, trapped souls of concubines who died within the walls. denied release. Theories persist. Was this palace haunting merely a metaphor for political imprisonment? Women alive yet erased from history? Or were the apparitions real? Testimony to lives cut short by unseen hands. Scholars still debate. The walls, as always, refuse to answer. You blink and the figure is gone. Yet the air still quivers where she stood, as if the chamber remembers her more vividly than your eyes. Then, faintly, you hear it. The sound of silk against stone fading down the corridor. You follow, though the path leads only to a wall. Smooth, unbroken, painted red. No door, no passage. No way she could have gone. The silence closes in, and with it a whisper from nowhere. Not all who walked here left through gates the moonlight pales. The lamps tremble, and the palace, restless in its sleep, exhales another secret into your bones. The chamber ahead is vast yet barren, a hollow within the heart of the palace. No silk curtains soften its edges. No lacquered screens disguise its bones. It is emptiness itself, and yet you feel it more crowded than any feast hall. The air presses close, weighted by presence unseen. This was not the Empress's domain, nor the Emperor's. This was theirs, the eunuchs. The nameless men who built an empire not with bloodlines, but with silence. Here voices rise in chorus. They do not speak words. They chant in breath, low and rhythmic, like the echo of countless ceremonies stacked upon one another. The sound is not one voice, but hundreds, layered and relentless, until the chamber vibrates with their oath. We serve. We endure. We vanish. Historians still wrestle with their legacy. Some paint eunuchs as parasites, draining dynasties of strength with intrigue and greed. Others recognize them as architects of stability, men who ensured continuity when emperors faltered. Both truths may be correct. Their lack of heirs freed them from personal ambition, yet bound them wholly to the empire and to themselves. The Ming archives speak of factions of eunuchs wielding armies, shaping taxes, even directing foreign policy. Skeptics argue these accounts were exaggerations, tales sharpened to vilify. Yet the fact remains, when emperors were weak, eunuchs became the empire's spine. You close your eyes and they gather around you. Countless figures, faces blurred, robes plain. They bow not to you, not to the throne, but to the palace itself. Their shadows rise higher than their bodies, reaching across the chamber walls until the room becomes a sea of silhouettes. Hands lift, pale, fingerless, endless, holding scrolls, seals, keys. With them they built dynasties. With them they destroyed them. One story lingers. The eunuchs of the late Ming accused of draining the treasury while famine roared outside the palace gates. Were they villains, or scapegoats for an empire already collapsing? Scholars divide sharply, yet the silence of the eunuchs themselves remains final. They left no descendants to defend or condemn them. They left only walls echoing their absence. The chant grows louder. Shadows stretch longer. The air grows thin. And then in unison, every voice whispers against your ear. A tide of sound that chills the bone. We had no names. We had no sons. Yet we were the empire. The words fade. The chamber empties, only silence remains. You return to the Empress's hidden chambers where it all began. The yellow curtains stir faintly, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and secrets. The air no longer feels still. It trembles as though waiting. Every chamber you passed, the bed of whispers, the walls that listened, the mirrored room, the banquet hall, the corridors of ghosts, has brought you back here, to the center of power. The long sang gleams faintly in the lamplight, empty yet not abandoned. The lacquered panels hum with silence, as if rehearsing the last line of a play. The Empress's shadow lingers even in absence, as though the chamber itself has absorbed her essence. You feel the weight of centuries in this single room. The eunuchs' oaths, the concubines' painted faces, the blood sealed in jade vials, the laughter drowned in wine, all of it condenses here, behind silk veils too heavy to lift. The palace is not stone, it is memory. And memory does not sleep. Historians debate the Empress's true power. Some claim they were little more than prisoners in gilded cages, their influence exaggerated by rumor. Others argue they ruled dynasties from behind curtains, wielding whispers sharper than swords. The truth lies somewhere in the folds of silk, hidden, layered, forbidden. The lamp sputters. The curtains swell, and you see it. A figure seated upon the long sang, her form hazy, embroidered robes glinting with phoenix fire. Her face is veiled, yet you feel her gaze pierce through. She lifts her hand, slender, pale, jeweled, and the chamber bows to her command. Her voice is a murmur, steady and cold. The throne is nothing. The whispers are everything. The words ripple outward through wood and stone, through walls and corridors. For a moment, the entire forbidden city exhales in unison. Then the curtains fall still. The figure fades. The silence that follows is not emptiness. It is fullness, of secrets, of ghosts, of power disguised as shadows. The Empress's chambers close around you, veils settling like a final breath. And as you turn to leave, you realize the palace does not end with walls. It ends with whispers that follow you into the dark. The palace is quiet now. The curtains no longer tremble. The lamps burn low, their flames bent like weary dancers bowing for the last time. You sit among the shadows, and the weight of centuries grows softer, as if the palace itself exhales and finally rests. You remember the long sang, where whispers became decrees. You recall the walls that listened to every sob and every secret. You walked through mirrored chambers, banquet halls, corridors, where unseen women drifted like silk through the night. You met the eunuchs, the faceless hands that shaped dynasties with oaths and silence. And you stood again before the Empress, veiled in gold, her voice carrying more power than thunder. Now those memories fold themselves away, like scrolls stored in hidden chests. The air is warm. The music of Tibar fades into a single note, stretched thin until it becomes silence. Curtains fall heavy, shutting out every shadow. Your breath slows. The palace does not haunt you anymore. It cradles you. The cold stone beneath becomes soft. The murmurs of forgotten concubines fade into lullabies, their sorrow dissolving into tenderness. The eunuch's chants soften into distant hums, steady and calm, like the rhythm of your own pulse. In the stillness, images blur, phoenix wings painted across lacquer, a jade cup gleaming with moonlight, a curtain drifting like a sigh. They dissolve into darkness. The stories close themselves gently, like doors sliding shut. All that remains is quiet. You are safe, wrapped in silk that no longer hides fear but warmth. The shadows hold no more secrets tonight. They watch over you instead as guardians rather than ghosts. The palace sleeps, and so should you. Sweet dreams.